delighted to be here and speak in such a well-represented audience and amazing speakers. There's one other reason why I'm so glad to be here. There's Barbara Hertz, the daughter of Sol Hertz. She's here in the room, and Barbara, thank you for all you do by making sure we don't forget about this. And we're in this room because of the invention and the contribution that your father did to the world of healthcare. I was given 10 minutes to speak about clinical and regulatory aspects of radioligand therapies, which is mission impossible no matter what. So therefore, I'm just going to scratch the surface. And my apologies, there will be questions left, but this is a good part because I think the discussion should continue. I'm working for GE Healthcare, although this talk is not a part of sponsored by GE Healthcare, but obviously working for GE Healthcare as a Chief Medical Officer, I'm getting paid for what I do. I'm also on board on a couple of advisory boards, industry boards. Some of them are mentioned, but I do not receive any financial contributions, and I do not have anything else to disclose. As I was getting ready to speak, and this is going to be a quick slide because a lot has been said already, we have enough clinical evidence for radioligand therapies. So it's been reported the 82% of reduction in risk, disease progression, or death from the NATTR-1 trial on the neuroendocrine tumors, followed by another trial that showed similar results, 72%, still impressive and very exciting. And then on the VISION trial for PSMA, 60%, and then also PSMA-4 trial. I'll make a couple of references and you will see some of those names being mentioned during my short presentation. Now, there are some clinical guidelines, and I work and live in the United States, so therefore we're all heavily guided by the FDA. So when I was preparing, I looked at the radioligand therapy clinical guidelines, and I selected very simply on what's available. Now, it is quite obvious that for lutetium PSMA 617, it is approved for metastatic castrate-resistant prostate cancer, and it is not as precise when we speak about lutetium dotatate. Nevertheless, there's also been a recent expansion, for example, to some pediatric patients. So there are some guidelines, but is that enough to fill the talk? I think there is much more to come, and the future is much more exciting than what we had in the past 6 years since the start of the introduction of radioligand therapies in the US market, as an example. Now, as I was getting ready, I came up with a couple of questions, kind of the content for what I would like to cover here. Now, there is a few when we speak about clinical guidelines, regulatory policy aspects, and some of this is really, radioligand therapy is a life-prolonging without curative intent or the curative intent treatment. The other part is radioligand therapy entered the world of cancer care, but there is other treatments and other therapies that are available. So how do we position radioligand therapies against medical oncology or together with medical oncology and specifically with radiation oncology, for example, into combination therapies as one of the future options? The other things that got me curious is also decision-making for radioligand therapy and the role of multidisciplinary tumor boards. Now, again, this is something that obviously needs to be taken into account. And the last but not the least, I love this personal aspect. So love the fact that we had the patient here. There is always nice to see at the clinical benefits through the lens of the patient. And therefore, this is what I would do. But as I looked at those questions that I have identified and something I wanted to talk about, I had a déjà vu. Because a few months before this meeting, I actually had a panel discussion with some of the leaders in the field of radioligand therapy and theranostics. And with a kind permission from Oncedium Foundation, they allowed me to share some of the findings and play the videos from that interview. Of course, everything that I'm going to show, I have consent of the people that actually been there. So this was the panel discussion, and the reason why I'm introducing those people right now is because you will see that this is a very diverse group. Now, majority of them are practicing in the US, although one of them is from Germany. but this is who they are. So you see radiation oncology, urology, medical oncology, radiation oncology, medical oncology, medical oncology. It's a little bit strange that we don't have anyone from nuclear medicine, although you will hear that in Europe and in the United States, there is some of the overlaps and some things that need to be taken into account with. And just the picture so that you will see in some of the recordings this really took place. So question number one, is the curative intent radioligand therapy? And this is what I would like to do first, is play this.
Minimal residual disease is a buzzword right now for multiple different tumor types. And we have more sensitive ways of detecting that that are more sensitive than imaging. Yeah. So I think that, maybe I would say that, part of the reason that we're not curing patients right now is because of kind of the unmet need and the lower regulatory hurdle of having a drug first approved in late stage where there's nothing else that's there. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a situation where, short of rare cases with immunotherapy, we're never really going to cure patients. But moving people up with more sensitive disease, more homogeneity, maybe, although I think the regimens probably need to be designed better.
So if I were to answer this question and just taking one thought out of what I just played, so this is the fact that radioligand therapy regulatory regimens need to get better and patient selection guidelines also need to widen. And I think that this is something that we can also expect. Then moving on next to the role of radioligand therapy and other therapies, asking the medical oncology and the place where radioligand therapy contributes and plays together with medical oncology professionals.
To me, I feel as an oncologist, I want my patient to have every life-prolonging therapy that we have. So there's not been great data in terms of how to sequence drugs one after the other. But I think theranostics, for instance, I think certainly have an edge above chemotherapy, both in terms of the ease of delivering it over a prolonged period of time, maybe even the toxicity profile, the finite number of treatments.
It's really fun to see medical oncologist is actually admitting the role of radiotheranostics and radioligand therapy. So therefore, this is what I mentioned here. In some ways, radioligand therapy is already offering a better option that, for example, chemotherapy, and expecting to get better. Now, this is a little bit tricky because I also expect chemotherapy to get better. But I think as those both fields are going to be advancing, I think we have a brighter future for radioligand therapy. Now let's move to radiation oncology. And then, of course, nothing is better than talk about radiation oncology when speaking to radiation oncologists.
I think we're going to need to be creative. And right now we're doing a lot of these theranostics for metastatic disease. But in the radiation oncology world, for high-risk disease, we do what we call a boost of the PSMA avid or the MRI lesion in the prostate gland. And we see that those patients have less local recurrence. We can do that with external beam, but there's often, for a posterior lesion, there could be rectal toxicity and off-target things. And maybe instead of doing external beam to give that boost dose, we can give something like Pluvicto. Or especially with actinium, we can target micrometastatic disease. So I think we're going to need to be creative and think outside the box as we start moving these up in earlier lines. And I think it has a lot of potential beyond what we've just thought about.
So if I were to take the courage and summarize also what's been said during that session, and especially here, so there is a visible complementary roles of radioligand therapy and radiation therapy, with more expected, for example, from alpha particles, and actinium is just as an example. Combination is obviously an option, and I'm so glad that it also correlates with the previous two speakers that talked about this. Then let's turn into decision-making for our radioligand therapy and the multidisciplinary tumor boards. Well, does it actually change anything in the fact that we want to be a team player and it's a team sports in terms of getting the patients the best options possible?
We as oncologists have learned to work very interdisciplinary with all disciplines because we need the radiologist therapy, we need the nuclear medicine, we need the surgeon, and in the moment it's like we're going more and more that the patient has a quite individual way. So as you said, I do maybe a radiation for only 2 metastatic lesions, or I even do a metastectomy if it's in the lung. And therefore, these multidisciplinary team approaches are the most important thing, and we as oncologists are more and more standing in the middle, like the DRS to who sends the patient to the different things, and it comes always back to us because the side effects then we manage and we direct the next direction. Yeah.
So to summarizing this part is radioligand therapies enters cancer care with multidisciplinary space, and its elevated need for close collaboration between physicians is not going anywhere. And the last but not least, and also playing along the lines set by those patient testimonials, so looking through the lens of the patient.
There's a very wide range of, I think, what patients want and seek and desire. Working in large academic institutions like us, we have patients that come in with the vision trial printed out. I've had a patient with the supplementary tables highlighted and notes, I'm this, this, and this on these different pages. How am I going to do? And that's exciting because it keeps me on my toes, but we also have a large population of patients that either decline to accept additional information. They say, give me the best treatment that you think, and I trust you to take me there. Or some patients that are wholly not trusting of any radioactive modality. So there's certainly a huge range. I think there is an opportunity when patients have options, particularly in the early lines of therapy, that they may come to you and say, no, I'd rather have this versus, say, chemotherapy. And that's going to be a thing for physicians and patients to work out.
All right, so I think it would be fair to say that patients are more than ever aware of radioligand therapy options, or should be even more aware, and are a factor to consider in decision-making and also selecting the care management pathway. So I know I did a little bit of cheating by using the outcomes of another meeting, but I hope this was useful. And the best part about this is the answers that I received to the questions that I wanted to answer in the first place are basically just my key takeaways. And I already verbalized them, so we don't really have to spend time on this. And with this, thank you for your attention.